Welcome back to the S.U.R.E Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Bell, author of S.U.R.E Parenting Building Blocks to Create Their Best Childhood. And as you can probably hear, I am a mama of 3 amazing kiddos. And on this podcast, we like to explore different topics in parenting that give us grief and find creative solutions so that we can become better parents and have a more peaceful home overall. So, with that said, let's jump into today's topic, which is lying. Lying has quite the bad rap in our society, and it is an interesting dilemma because everybody lies. All kids lie, every single one of them. All adults lie, every single one of them. And yet most of us were raised that lying is this catastrophic atrocity. And I don't really know why. I was raised that way. I was raised that lying was the worst thing you could do. Except it's really not. It's pretty normal, actually. And in fact, a properly developing mind will lie, especially because they don't have ethics and morals in place yet. Their brain's not done developing till they're 25. So if you've got a kid who's lying about something, especially little things you know they're lying about, it's just an expression of their creativity. It means they're developing the way they're supposed to develop. That's good news. So there was a question in our group on Facebook, Empowering Moms to Uplift Kids, and it had to do with lying. Essentially, the question was, my kiddo lied about getting food out of the pantry that he wasn't supposed to have and hiding in his room to eat it. What am I supposed to do here? So the first thing that I answered is how I handle the lying about anything part. So with my kids, I point out to them, the truth is blah, 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 whatever I know to be true. I do not ever ask a question if I already know the answer. That in and of itself is lying, pretending that I don't know when I really do, just to trap them in a lie and, aha, I got you. That's not honest. So I don't do that. I just say, oh, well, the truth is you took those. I either saw you, or I can see the chocolate on your face, or I see the wrappers on your desk, whatever it may be. Is there still room for error? Sure. Maybe there's this, long shot chance that Dad ate chocolate and put the wrappers on the desk when he was taking in, their laundry and forgot about it. It's pretty slim. And I find that if I just make a direct statement, pretty quickly they cop to it. They don't tend to argue unless there is actually more to the story, in which case they should argue, and I want to hear it. So anyhow, I say to my kids, the truth is that you took those foods or those candies. You can always tell me the truth. You wanted those chocolates, and you thought that I was going to say no, so you just took them rather than asking, right? And they look at me with these big wide eyes like I'm some sort of magician. And usually they just say, yeah, that's what happened. And I can understand that, I can relate to that. I can relate to wanting some chocolate and just wanting it. I'm human, they're human. So then I go into problem solving. How else could you solve that problem instead of hiding it or lying about it? Because our relationship is really important to me. And if we lie to each other, then we can't trust each other. And trust is the most important part of our relationship. So how else could we solve this problem? And so I invite them to problem solve with me. Oftentimes, the easiest and most obvious option is a lie. So by sitting down and actually practicing coming up with those other ideas, the next time they're in that situation, they may well be able to come up with some other option. I want to give their brain practice thinking that way. I do not punish lies because lying is done as some sort of self-defense mechanism. If a kid doesn't feel safe, even very, very minorly, like safe from your disappointment or safe from, essentially just being told no, being shut down and what they want, then they're going to lie, because self-preservation is a biological imperative. That's going to win out. Now, if you have strict punishments in place for lying, that's going to make them lie even more. If you have punishments at all, that's going to make them lie even more, because they have even more to protect themselves from. So me trying to punish them just proves that they were right and they need to lie to avoid being punished. So I just don't. I assume that they need my help to use some other tool to get what they want or to meet their need. So that was how I responded. And the mama responded back to me and she said, "Can you elaborate more? I like your answer, but like my son will get into stuff he isn't supposed to and go hide in his room. In the example you used, you wanted these chocolates and you thought I would say no. So in my case, he doesn't ask, he just gets it and hides to eat it. If confronted, he lies to avoid getting in trouble." So do you remember I said, I don't ask a question I already know the answer to? Moving on. So I guess I have two questions. What solutions have your kids come up with for how else you could solve the problem instead of hiding or lying? And if you don't punish them for doing something like that, meaning lying, then how do they learn that sometimes mom just says no and that's okay and you don't always get what you want, if there's no consequence for them doing or taking something that they know they shouldn't have anyway? So I answered her back and I said the second question assumes that learning comes from punishment. And this is a huge misconception in parenting. So many parents would love to parent more patiently, more respectfully, more gently, but they're afraid that if they do, then their kids aren't going to learn. And I would love to dispel that right here and now. The brain learning means forming new neural connections. That process cannot actually happen if the brain is stressed. When the cortisol hormone is released, as that cortisol is bathing the brain, it can't make those connections. So scientifically, punishment just puts off learning. How they learn is by practice, and they have to practice, like I said, the problem-solving skills. And then in this instance, they might also learn by having to either put back what they took or replace it. Maybe that was my chocolate and I was saving it. So now it's their responsibility, having eaten my chocolate, to go ahead and replace that chocolate. They might have to use allowance money or birthday money or money that they earn doing some other thing. Both of my kids like to earn money, so they do little jobs here and there to have money on hand. We don't actually do allowance. That's a topic for another podcast, but whatever it is, it becomes their responsibility to replace what they took. And, that's really what would happen if my husband ate my chocolate. You know what I mean? Like, it would be up to him to fund new chocolate for me because it's mine and I wanted it and I was saving it and now it's gone. You know what I mean? So some of the solutions that might come up that my kids have said are to ask first. Pretty obvious, kind of a duh moment, but really that is the answer, ask first instead. Many times I say yes. If my kid says to me, "But I really just want a piece of chocolate," probably I'm going to say yes, or I'm going to be able to say yes in a way that holds my boundaries, such as yes after dinner, or yes, pick out which one you want, we'll put it on top of the fridge and you can have it tomorrow morning. Something like that. Maybe it's too close to bedtime, something along those lines. The second one was come up with a plan to present for eating that chocolate later. So they might actually say that, like, "Oh, I can't have a chocolate right now, but can I have it later?" Sure. Bring their own money to the store with us so that they can buy their own chocolate. Choose something more acceptable to both of us, like a Lara bar, which has some nutrition to it and, they love and they think it's a treat. And I'm a little more comfortable with them eating that than chocolate all the time. Maybe they just feel frustrated and they explain their frustration so that we can either change how we handle chocolate or help them deal with that frustration, or both. So those are 5 different solutions that we've come up with when we've talked about this sort of situation together. So if my kids can't help themselves, then I help them. So in this kiddo's instance, maybe the sneaking was showing that he was really struggling with moderation and impulse control, which again is normal because his brain is not fully developed, right? So the chocolate itself might need to just go away for a while. If this is an ongoing thing, which I believe it was in this case, maybe they just need to not have chocolate in the house for a while. Like, this is causing stress in the family. This is putting strain on the relationship. No piece of chocolate is worth that, right? Now, if you just say, that's it, I'm throwing it all away, well, that's just a punishment. And now all they focus on is how mean you are and how unfair it is. But if you talk about solutions and you talk about impulse control and you talk about how you want to help them to be able to moderate better by giving them a break from this constant exposure to chocolate and then reintroducing it, at a later time, that feels like working together to solve a bigger problem. Yeah, it might sting, but it makes sense. And so that self-defense doesn't get triggered. Your kiddo can understand and relate to that. Now, if we're talking about a 1-year-old, just put it out of his reach. 1-year-olds can't be this logical. But in this instance, I believe we were talking about an 8-year-old. So I also said it may sound like splitting hairs, but I have noticed that when I use this approach, my kids really start thinking about their choices and actions. And when I slip back into frustration, they double down so that they can quote unquote win, because I've set us up as adversaries and they have my personal inner fire. It is a NOS trait. It's my maiden name. My father is well known for saying that if you let a fight become a matter of principle, you will burn the house down before you give in. And that's pretty accurate for NOS members of that family. And my kids have that too. So I don't want to be adversaries with my kids. Yes, I don't have to burn the house down to win. I am the parent. And, I can throw it all away or I can ban chocolate from the house, but that's not really helping them learn. That's not really getting to the root of the issue. The other thing to recognize in this specific instance is that these foods have highly addictive properties. And so expecting an 8-year-old with an underdeveloped brain to consume something addictive and not consume more isn't really an expectation that you can put on an 8-year-old. Now, you can help him to create some boundaries. In our home, we have a 1 sugar thing a day rule. And in addition, I don't have foods in my home that my kids can't have. So I have dark chocolate in my home. I have 86% for the kids and my husband because they all like really dark chocolate. Personally, I like 72% dark chocolate. I have some dark chocolate covered almonds. And I think that's it right now. And that gives me the comfort of knowing that even if my kids get into the chocolate and they have a bunch of chocolate, it's not really that big of a deal. So it lets me stay calm. It lets me to look at the situation as it is rather than catastrophizing and blowing it up into something that it's not. So reading my notes here, I see that I wrote, in addition, the brain's not fully formed until the age of 25. And sadly, the one part that's least formed is the part that stops impulses, like snatching a sweet and running to hide. So you've got the addiction piece, and then you've got the unformed brain piece, and that's 2 strikes against him, against this kiddo. So if he sees no viable solution, that's strike 3 right there. So, he feels this feeling, this craving. He wants what he wants. He doesn't know how to get it. He sees it. It's really simple. It's as simple as grabbing it, even though he knows you probably don't want him to. It's just too hard to control that impulse. Punishing him is not going to grow his brain more. It's not going to mature him faster. Problem solving will help him to create connections between different neurons so that he thinks differently. So sitting down and saying, oh man, bummer, you ate that entire bar. We get the Ghirardellis that have, 8 little squares. If they ate all of them, that stinks because I'm not buying chocolate again for 2 weeks. So now we just have no chocolate rather than being able to have a little bit of every day. It's not a punishment. It's just what happens if you binge eat all of the good stuff in 1 minute, in one sitting, then you're without it. So understanding those things and helping them to learn and cope with those frustrations, and again, problem solving with them. Maybe giving them a boundary that they can trust and understand, like 1 sugar thing a day. Maybe that's not for you. Your family might be really good at intuitive eating and just going with the flow and having chocolate when you want chocolate and nobody overeats it, and that's fine. And a lot of kids do not fall into that category, just because they don't have the impulse control. They don't fully grasp the nutrition in everything that they eat. They eat what we present to them. And so we do have to have some control over what we're exposing to them or exposing them to. And as they mature and as they do have a fully formed brain, it would be great for them to all be able to eat intuitively. And also, sugar is as addictive as cocaine. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. Our bodies are wired for survival, and we haven't caught up to the fact that we have no limit to food. Where our bodies are internally designed to crave super palatable, super sweet, high calorie foods, because that means our brain's going to get energy quickly, and that might allow us to store fat for times when we are in famine, when we don't have food available to us. Except those times don't exist. So we have to be a little bit more conscious. We have to be a little bit more aware. Now, I do not believe that there are good foods and bad foods. Food's food. Some things are sweeter, some things are less sweet. Foods all do something for you. Personally, dark chocolate is a very satisfying taste to me. I feel relaxed and happy when I eat it. I just like when I eat, tortilla soup with avocado in it, I feel very satiated and full. When I eat a big salad, I feel refreshed. Talk about how foods make you feel. My kids know that if they eat too much sugar, then their bellies ache and they have bathroom problems. And it doesn't feel good. They're able to understand that. And so when I gently remind them, hey, I want to make sure that you're remembering if you eat too much of that, it will hurt your belly, they stop. I don't have to get into a fight about it because they're aware, and it's been presented to them in a way that respects their autonomy to an extent, because again, they don't have fully formed brains. They still need us to set firm boundaries and lovingly guide them around and through and, within those boundaries. And they've been allowed to experiment a little bit, say with Halloween candy, where they see what it feels like to eat too much candy and how yucky that feels. And they know they don't actually want to feel that way. So we dump out all the candy and we pick through and grab the, few pieces to try here and there. Oftentimes we'll split one mini bar among the 4 of us. I've got the 2 older boys and then, my husband and I. Obviously the baby can't have any yet, but if I do that, then everybody gets to taste it. Everybody got that experience. Nobody's overdone it. And we can try more things. And we, try a bunch of different stuff. And then we decide, what? I feel full. I feel like I don't need any more. And we pack the rest of it in a bucket. And the Switch Witch brings us a toy instead. It is a pretty cool game. My kids love that game. So ultimately, it comes down to this. Figure out why your kid is lying, what they're lying about. Never try to trap them in a lie. It's dishonest. Now you're the liar. Do not force them to apologize. You're teaching them that they have to lie to get out of trouble. Accept that lying happens. Let them know that that's not the truth. Teach them that trust is very, very, very important. And you want to be able to trust them. Give them the benefit of the doubt every once in a while, even if you're not sure, even if it doesn't make sense to you. Every once in a while, it's okay to just say, you know what? I'm going to choose to trust you and let it go. Those votes of confidence matter. And take a deep breath. Lying is a part of development. I think that we really have to remember that it's very easy to sit back with 20/20 vision and call something a lie. This is a lie, for sure. But the whole concept of lying is very nuanced in our society. You've got books which can be completely fiction, but that's not lying, that's storytelling. But then you have a kid who makes up a story and now he's lying. But was he lying or was he storytelling? And how do you define the difference? And it's not like all books are fiction. Obviously, there's nonfiction. So how do you tell the difference there? Well, the nonfiction books have, real pictures, actual photography in them, right? Except some fiction books do too. And as a matter of fact, you've got shows like Wildcrats that have cartoons that also have factual information in them. And you've got shows like Dino Dan that share factual information, but clearly you can't actually have a kid out with dinosaurs. So that part's made up, but the dinosaurs aren't made up. That's the paleontology is factual, but the show itself isn't. It's very confusing and very nuanced, and you can have a lot of wiggle room when it comes to the truth. Do you want your kid to say, Grandma, I already have this shirt. Why did you get me another one? No, you want them to just say thank you. Do you really want your kid to tell your best friend, oh, I hate your haircut. That looks terrible. No, even if he thinks it. You don't want him to say that because that's rude. So we lie for the sake of not being rude. We lie to be polite. We lie to save people's feelings. And how on earth do you teach the nuance of white lies versus some other color lies? And why are some lies white? I don't know. The point is it's complicated. It is confusing. And we are completely allowed to remove all of the tension and pressure around the topic of lying. Just accept it as a normal part of development and teach our kids how to handle situations differently instead. Practice with them, let them stretch their brain muscles and become better at problem solving so that they don't have to rely on the lies. In the process, we are teaching them that they can trust us, that we are reliable and trustworthy, and that when they come to us with a tough situation, we're going to help them. We're not going to put them in timeout. We're not going to yell at them. We're not going to scold them. We're going to help them. Does that mean you'll never be frustrated? Of course not. And you can still own your part, your feelings, and say, this is really frustrating for me. I need a few minutes so that we can talk calmly. Go take a break, calm down. Come back and say, okay, thank you for coming to me. It's really important that we trust each other. I'm really glad you told me. Now let's sit down and solve this problem together. What can you do to make it better? If it's something, like as minimal as chocolate, remember that. It's just some candy. It's just a piece of chocolate. It's not worth damaging your relationship over. Let it be little. Let it be little over and over and over and over again. Let them learn how to better handle these situations with all of these little examples. Use them as learning opportunities. Celebrate those opportunities. And then when they're older and they're facing real hard stuff, they'll come to you because they trust you. You're focused on whether or not you can trust them, but trust me, they're trying to figure out if they can trust you too. Be trustworthy. Be that leader that they can come to with the hard stuff. Be the one that they know will have their back and be by their side. That's the beauty that comes from little kids lying, is that you can use those opportunities to teach them how to be trustworthy and how to trust you. That's all I've got on lying, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you like this podcast, please share it with somebody that could use some information on S.U.R.E parenting, on helping their kids grow up to be the best kids possible, the best adults possible. or on lying in general, just understanding lying from a different perspective. I will see you all on the next episode. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye.